Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Chris from Rasaiyana, leader of Alchemy Club and Firestarter Club in Colorado Springs. And I have with me today Priya Ford, who is a sports psychologist and good friend of mine and neighbor here in Colorado Springs. And I invited her to come into our community today to talk about the value of team dynamics and how working in groups can accelerate results. Not only can, it does, and it accelerates results exponentially, and why that is, and how we can leverage the dynamics working in groups or in teams to get to the lives that we deserve and frankly want to have. So welcome, Priya. Thanks for taking some time to join us today.
Of
Um,
course, thank
I
you.
yeah, I tell me, as a sports, did you grow up playing sports? Were you an athlete yourself?
I did, yeah. So I'm originally from North Carolina, and I grew up playing a couple different sports. I dabbled in gymnastics, not the best there. I was too tall for it, didn't work out. I played soccer, so that was my first introduction to group dynamics, team dynamics. And unfortunately, it was too much running for me, especially in the heat of North Carolina. So quit soccer and then landed with volleyball, and that is still my passion. And team dynamics, team sports, I just find that is my comfort zone. That's where I thrive. Being with other people helps me feel more motivated, more enthusiastic about what I'm doing. So that's a little bit about my background with sport, and that led me into sports psychology. So obviously, sports psychology is breaking down how we're thinking, our mental game in the context of different performances that we do, whether that be traditional sports or even just different performances outside of the sporting context. So that's a little bit about me, and I appreciate you having me here today.
Yeah, welcome. Tell me, as an expert in group dynamics, what can you explain some of the key factors that contribute to the success of a high performing team or group? Because I know most of us, I'm sure, like myself, have had the experience of being on a crappy team. Right.
Yeah.
And like that sucks. Like I remember even as a kid growing up and hating group assignments because I always
Yeah.
felt I did more work than everyone else,
Yep.
and like sometimes I still feel like that as an adult, but I've also learned how to be an effective leader. So
Yes.
what are the dynamics and factors outside of obviously the leader or manager or coach or what have you that make that a high performing outcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like there are so many factors that go into making for a good, effective, cohesive team. And one of the starting points that I always like to start teams on when I'm doing group work and helping teams just with this exact issue here is how do we make our team more effective? I like to first analyze where are we starting from? So a really good model that people can research into and look more into is the stages of a team by Tuckman. I believe it was in the 1970s or 80s that this model came out. And it goes through 5 different stages of a team. And just having awareness of where your team is starting from can really help you then figure out, okay, what are the next steps forward? So some of those next steps forward that I would analyze with the team to help make them more effective are topics such as communication. Are we communicating well on a consistent basis? And a byproduct of communication being conflict resolution. So when we have some sort of tiff with somebody else or there's some drama within our group, how are we able to communicate about that and then gracefully move through that conflict so we can move forward together as a team and, just have that good relationship with the other people that we're around. With
Who
that
do you think
too,
is most responsible for that? Do you think it's
ooh,
because it's easy and often many people's experience, right? Where we've experienced poor management, right? Or like you've
yeah,
got a poor leader on a team and you're like, this sucks, right? But then
yeah.
is it just that individual's responsibility or is it a co-creation or co-collaborated kind of energy that is a responsibility of everyone, do you think?
I wholeheartedly believe it's the responsibility of everybody. So, for example, if you have a leader who lacks self awareness and does not realize what's going on within themselves and how they're leading a group or a team, that is going to be very detrimental for those people that they're leading and not setting a great example. So maybe they don't even realize, hey, we're having conflict on the team. I need to be the one to give people the tools to mitigate this conflict, work through it, or maybe I need to be the one leading this conversation as a leader. If they don't have that awareness and ability within themselves, not going to set up great team dynamics. But then also, I think it works from the bottom up as well. So if you're on a team in which you're noticing this is not the most effective team, and you're not speaking up about your experience and helping other people have that awareness of what's going on, I also believe the fall or the weight falls on that person's shoulders as well. So it's on
Yeah.
everybody to contribute and do their best, especially if this is a team that they want to work. That's the key.
Yeah. My background is in Ayurvedic medicine and yoga, as well as orthopedic medicine. And I work with people who have chronic pain and are looking for mobility and natural
Mhm.
pain relief using a combination of these traditional and wisdom traditions. Um, and so we talk about having this collective consciousness in
Mhm.
groups, right? That when we work, part of why group dynamics are so effective versus working in isolation, trying to accomplish a goal on your own, is that you have this, it's metaphysical even, this shared vision, shared values,
Yeah.
this structure to create accountability. And for those within the group, there's someone along different stages of the path. So you've got I do seasonal cleanses twice a year. I lead community seasonal cleanses.
Oh,
There's some
love
people
that.
who've never done a cleanse. And then I've got veterans who have been doing classic Ayurvedic cleanses for like decades.
Right.
And then I've got everywhere in between, right? And so it makes it a collaborative effort when you have those different gradations, because it makes sense for someone who's a beginner over here to work with someone who's just a few stages ahead of them to help pull
Mhm.
them up, than trying to meet the expert who's over here. And
Yeah.
that's where the group dynamics come, because you get crowdsourcing
Yeah. And
through
it's
different
interesting
levels.
too, because sometimes, just to your point, when somebody is considered an expert or they've gone through these seasonal cleansings, for decades, as you said, you may have forgotten what it's like to be at your very
Absolutely.
first cleanse. And so it's almost like you're out of touch. So I love this idea of matching people, that a beginner with someone who's just a couple steps ahead, who's like, hey, I just went through this process of being a beginner. Here's
That's
what I learned. Here's what I would advise. Here's what to keep in mind. And I think that's so important for just teams in general, is matching people with who's going to work best with them and who's going to mentor them the best. Mentorship is so powerful when you're mentored with the right person.
Yeah, yeah, really pooling knowledge and ideas will generate the innovative solutions. And you'll get, often the intelligence of the group
Yeah,
will surpass that of any single individual. And so
it's
you
true.
you lean into faster and more effective problem solving.
Yeah.
Is
And
the
if we
bottom
think
line.
about,
So yeah, and
yeah,
that's why these kind of like mastermind groups blew up and became, really popular, and especially when COVID happened and we were all
mhm,
quarantined and we had to, kind of codify our knowledge and like keep working, right?
yeah.
And so it was like, hey, wait a minute, we've got this great container of dynamics here. Also, there's a division of labor and specialization when you're in
Mhm,
groups, right? So
yeah.
you can set different tasks and responsibilities to be divided based on skills and strengths.
Oh, it's so true. And that's something that I focus on a lot within my work, is helping people find their strengths and their weaknesses. What are your areas of improvement? Because when you know that for yourself, and when you know that about the people around you that you're in contact with, that's when, just like you're saying, Chris, this idea of leaning on each other's strengths helps foster a team dynamic that is thriving, because we know where we excel. We also know where we need to continue to learn, and that's okay. It's
Yeah,
shared knowledge that it's okay.
yeah, exactly. Because motivation alone will not get you there.
Definitely
I'm
not.
gonna tell you that right now, honey, because if you are in my orbit or in my clubs, you know that I'm gonna keep it real with you. I don't want to be anybody's guru. You're your own guru. I'm gonna give
Yes.
you the bumper lanes to keep you safe, and I'm gonna share my experience having come down the road decades of practicing these ancient traditions. And I'll tell you that systems that don't work don't last thousands of years.
That is very true.
And so motivation and accountability is what needs to be married. And you get that in group
Yes.
dynamics. You don't get that one-on-one, or you don't
Yes.
get it as much, right? Because there's only so much time you can like connect with a single schedule. If you've got many people, you have that much more opportunity for other ideas, making accountability partners and buddies for your goals and objectives, and getting the momentum going,
Yeah.
because motivation won't be there. So you have all the time,
Right.
right? But and so often before you have a breakthrough, you're going to have a breakdown. You'll there when there's a wave of strong resistance, when you're coming up against something and you're feeling some really strong resistance, I feel like, oh, that's right before a breakthrough.
Yes. It's so
Because
true.
it's your old identity. The yogis refer to this as tapas, Tapas. This is it's friction of the old identity rubbing against the new identity. The old pattern or some scar or habit is rubbing against the new, and there's friction.
Yeah, of
And with
course.
fire is transformation,
I
right?
love
So
that.
there's always going to be that breakdown before the breakthrough. And that's when you need your posse and the power of the peeps
Yes.
around you, because mainstream culture will pull you back every
It's
time.
true.
It does
Yeah.
me. And I'm an expert and I've been
I
doing this
know. Me
25
too.
plus years. And, sometimes people are horrified if they see me at a barbecue drinking a Diet Coke. And I'm like, whoa, 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 I'm human. I practice this too, right?
Yeah.
But self-healing is the system of Ayurveda, and groups and community with the yogis.
And
Sangha is a critical component of that.
I love that. And to speak to your point, where if we think about just us as humans in general, we are meant to be around other people. Like evolutionarily, biologically speaking, we are not supposed to be lone wolves, quote unquote. We literally were in groups. We survived in groups. The people who were able to procreate, pass on genetics were people who were in groups, because there's security in groups and there's growth in groups. So just based on that, we are meant to be with other people. So we should be leaning into that knowledge and finding new opportunities of when can I be with other people, especially other people that are fostering growth and helping to support me, especially when I need it the most.
That's critical.
Yes.
It doesn't have that component, folks. It's not helpful. Okay. It's just a
Mhm.
big distraction, is what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember I studied a part of my studies and training were at Kripalu Yoga Institute in Lenox, Massachusetts, out in the East Coast, Berkshire Mountains. Shout out to Massachusetts. Um, and Swami Kripalu would say that what's even more important than discipline is company. The
Mhm.
company you're keeping is critical. And
Yeah.
so as you go through identity evolution, and my members find this in my experience, and we talk about it, and we actually have tools to address how your relationships are going to inevitably change as you change, and how to navigate those changes in our
Yeah.
relationships, and allow for the right relationship around you, so that aligned action and accountability and inspiration are there when motivation is not, where
Yeah.
rapid feedback and learning is there, where being alone
Yes.
is not, where resource pooling is there, where being alone is not, right? So this is why I really think it's important to understand the importance of leveraging this tool
Yeah.
of community. Um,
Yeah.
and
And
and certainly one-on-one work is needed sometimes too, right?
yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Of course, yeah. The individual work, one-on-one work has its time, has its place, of course. And especially being in the psychology field, I do believe that some of the most impactful work does happen one-on-one when you can really have that time to have a conversation with someone, allow them to open up and share about their experiences, what they're going through, and have that connection just within two people. Super valuable. But I would also say pairing individual work with group work, that is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, quote unquote, because you get that individualized attention and growth, but then you also get that growth from other people. And the reason why I think this is important is because let's say I'm running a workshop with 10 people in it, and they're all, let's say, volleyball players, since I'm a volleyball player. I can speak from my experience and share things as an expert in the sports psychology field. But once they take that information and they talk about it with each other, that's when that learning is so much more beneficial because they're tying information to their own experiences. And now somebody has this space to share with their teammates. Hey, this really impacted me in XYZ situation, or here's how I process something that Priya told me. And now the other teammate can hear that and say, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Or it really makes sense to apply this information to this specific situation. Just shared knowledge and open communication. And that's really what we want people to be taking away from these experiences is how can this help you as an individual? And yes, sometimes that's individual work helps there, but also how can this help impact you as a teammate within your other relationships? And how can you help other people grow through the knowledge that you're gaining?
Yeah, I mean, speaking to that, can you provide some examples of specific personality traits that can either enhance or hinder a group performance?
Oh, that's a great, great question. I wish I had just a set list of, hey, if you had these top 5 personality traits, you're going to be the best teammate ever. That is so nuanced because people are so nuanced in general. Humans are just so nuanced.
Hmm.
So I don't know if we can define specific personality traits, but here's what I do think. I think that there's different skills that people can build upon that may influence their personality, but more I would say more impactfully, it's impacting their dynamics with other people. So especially in a group setting, that's what we're looking for. How are you interacting with other people? How are you making other people feel? So on and so forth. So things that come to mind are your communication skills, your active listening skills, your empathy skills, your self-awareness and self-regulation skills, your leadership skills, right? All different things we can work on. Personality traits, debatable on if we can really drastically change them or have specific ones that make you the ideal team member.
Oh, that's a really great distinction to make. Yeah, because personality versus skill set, right? Um, when I
And
talk about
depending,
when I talk about sets and resources in our clubs, we talk about 4 different sets. We talk about skill set,
mhm,
mindset, people,
yes,
people set,
yes,
right?
I love that. And those are all critical ingredients to being a great teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how does group dynamics evolve and change over time? What are some common patterns or stages in groups that are together for, extended periods of time, like several months? Like if you do a yoga teacher training, some kind of like
Mhm.
immersion teacher training, you're with that group of people. It's an intense, if anyone's ever done a yoga teacher training or some type of like intensive professional, education, then that there's this like intensity to it and you're on it, right, for a few days. And then how does that change over time if you're with a group for 6 months versus a year versus 3 weeks? Like, what are some stages of groups? that-
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to stages of a team, we have forming, storming, norming, performing. And I would say a group or a team can
Wait,
be
wait, wait. Slow that down for the people that are listening, right? Storming. Say
So
it
first
again.
one is forming. So this is when a group is coming together. So for you said yoga immersion training, that would be like, hey, we just all got to the retreat, or wherever it is, we're all coming together as a group. Storming. So storming is when we are just trying to figure out what is our role, what are the group dynamics, how do I fit into this group, how do other people fit into this group. Sometimes there's a little bit of confusion and conflict there. Then once we pass the storming phase, we go into norming. So now we're finding our groove. Those roles are becoming more defined. We're finding the people we click with and probably interacting with them a little bit more. We're figuring things out, and we're working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
The last one is performing. So performing is like the gold standard. This is when we are all aligned really well. We are all living out our roles. We have effective communication. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, and we can play upon those as a team. We're reaching our
The
goal.
machine is running. Yeah.
Yes, the machine is running, it's well oiled. And then the last stage that some people have added to this model is adjourning. So this is now when the team is being dismanned. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah. Disbanded, maybe? I don't know.
Disbanding, that's the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Disbanded, we're now leaving this group, maybe to go back to our homes and practice yoga where we are, things like that. So the group is literally leaving. So with these different stages of a team, it's not always linear. And it's so interesting with the groups that I work with, finding this out and seeing where sometimes they go linear. Maybe they go from forming to storming and norming, and they never get to performing. It's like, all right, let's find that missing element. How can we get to performing? Or sometimes they go from storming to performing. There's a big jump. We've done a lot of work with the group, and they are really finding their groove. And then sometimes you see too, a group will start in performing, or they'll be in that performing stage. And man, something happened. Maybe there was some conflict, some drama on the team, or even a leadership change out. Boom, we went right back to storming or even forming with those leadership changes. So we can really bounce around within these teams of any of these stages. And it kind of is what it is, just based on who's on your team, what's going on with your team, what's leadership like, are we reaching our goals or not?
Right. Talking about what are the ground rules for your group. What is that is the shared vision. And that is, if you're in a group and that's not clear, then that needs to be priority numero uno.
It
Like,
has to be
why are
number
we
one.
here? Why did you take my time to be here?
Yes. You have to
What
have a
is it?
goal.
Yeah, exactly. We use a lot of ground rules in my membership clubs and in Club Alchemy and Club Firestarter. We actually use the ground rules from the Wellness Pro Academy from Kate Stillman, who is one of my coaches and someone that I work with regularly. Let's see if I can blow this up without getting in the way.
And it's great that you all lay out some expectations, and
100%.
just it's set from the beginning. Hey, here's some things that I know when I sign up for this is what I am consenting to. And this is what other people are consenting to as well. It really builds trust within that group dynamic.
That's right. It builds the accountability and the container for why we're here, And as we go through the year together in my programs and clubs, we'll have weekly calls and we revisit these on every call and stay committed to them, because that's part of the infrastructure for you to be successful, communicating candidly, but with care. And that's where I find most people's growing edge is in groups. We have either someone who's dominating the conversation. We're talking about skill sets, right? And such, and versus personality traits. And so is there someone dominating? Is there someone that is just kind of lurker, right? They're the lurker in the background. I was a lurker for years in Wellness Pro Academy before I stepped forward, right? We definitely reach in when we are worried about something. We say, reach out, don't freak out. And that in groups, you give in order to receive. You don't just go expecting to receive the sum benefit of everybody's work, right? You're part of that web. And to understand that resistance will arise before a breakthrough.
Yes.
To know that that's a natural part of the process.
And we know the phrase of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. That's exactly what that is. And it feels a little uncomfortable. Change can feel that way, and that's okay. It means you're stepping forward with life. That should be celebrated.
Absolutely. You've got to be all in.
Yes.
Right. And being all in doesn't mean you have to execute perfectly. It doesn't mean we're going for the 100% execution here. Okay. Being all in means you're really going to lean into the learn, right? You have to be willing to acknowledge that you might not know everything, right?
Yeah.
You might not have experienced all there is yet in your life. So get with the program if you want to hang in my
Yes.
clubs, because I'm rewriting the narrative on aging and how to do that skillfully and how to do that with vitality. And unfortunately, that requires living against mainstream culture most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And
Yeah.
that's why you need Sangha. That's why you need groups, because you see the incidence of autoimmune conditions rising. We see how many people are still suffering from long COVID symptoms. We
Mhm.
see, people having problems with their gut and digestion. And we're just not being um, committed as
Yeah.
much as we deserve. And if I may speak candidly, as I often do, and rile little feathers here, but here in the US, America, we don't have the same kind of protection in our food regulation that other countries get the privilege of. And so,
True.
let's stop bullshitting people here and get honest around our agriculture methods. And maybe one day we can forgive our leaders. Maybe, right? When I think as a yogi on a global perspective, like they just don't know, but it's hard to be like, how can you not know, man?
I
Like the data's in, the
I
data's in.
know.
So that's why self-healing, I'm so passionate about teaching people Ayurveda and how to self-heal. Doesn't mean we don't need allopathic medicine. We certainly do need it for intervention of infectious disease. And believe me, you're going to want that around when you need it.
Mhm.
And and everything in between, these traditional systems and these group and team dynamics are going to really leverage your life force.
Yeah.
That's
And I
what we're
think
talking
about,
about.
yeah, and I think about too, because you brought up this idea of mainstream media and how tough it can be. Think about all the information that's out there on the internet now, and through the different means that however you digest your information, whether that be social media like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, whether that be through the news, whether that be just through Google, Bing searches, whatever it may be. There is just so much information out there. And for me, I will say, honestly, it's overwhelming. There are times that I try to do my own research and educate myself, and I am just too overwhelmed with one person says, you have to do X and this is the way. And then I click to the next page and it's this person says Y, you have to do Y and this is the way.
Yeah.
And now it's completely conflicting information. And myself as a consumer who's trying to educate myself and do right by my mind, my body, my health, which one do I choose, right? And a lot of those times, that's when I lean on my support system, whether that be my mentors, other experts, my friends who are going through similar processes as me.
Right.
And I have to learn through them and their experiences. I can't do it all
Well,
by myself.
no, and ultimately you'll learn through your own experiences,
Mhm.
right? That's embodied knowledge, because a lot of knowledge can be found on a search engine or any public library. But we're talking about actually knowing what's right for yourself. That's
Yes.
that's a skill set, folks. And let me tell
Yes.
you, we didn't learn that in American culture, but cultures around the world globally who have thousands of years of traditions did learn this, right? And
Yes.
so that's, I feel, the big difference, right? And
Yeah.
so as you try to ascertain what's going to work for you, the reality is you are the guru. Only you will know until you try it, right?
Mhm.
And I think that in our culture there's this big outsourcing of knowledge. We just outsource all the decision making and the expertise to someone else, and I think kind of put our allopathic doctors on a pedestal, not
Yep.
really appreciating the limited framework that even they are working in, and
Mhm.
not being able to practice medicine the way that I believe they thought they would when they went to med school, right?
Yep.
I'm one of those people. I applied to med school. That was my trajectory in the beginning of my wellness career. And
Ah, I didn't know
that-
that.
yeah, that's how I landed in Boston. I was, the typical pre-med biochem chem geek in college, and went to Boston right after graduating. So I worked for a number of orthopedic surgeons in Boston hospitals, did clinical research, and applied to med school. I wasn't accepted, folks, and that was probably the best thing that could have happened, right? Because then I had to just sit with it for a bit. And at that point, I was in my early 20s and had already been doing the grind for
Mhm.
5 or 6 years. And when I looked at my mentors, I was like, these aren't necessarily happy people in their lives.
Yeah.
Their marriages are falling apart. They have kids they never see.
Gosh.
And in Boston, there was a lot of academic uh, rigor, which I love, but
Mhm.
also competition when it came to grants and who was publishing and what resources were available. And I wasn't seeing the collective consciousness as much as I wanted to
Yeah.
amongst healers, right? So when you begin your journey, know that we believe here at Rasayana and in my communities that you really are your own teacher.
Mhm.
Yes, do the research, right? Keep yourself safe. Work with people and professionals who have been vetted and trained and licensed or certified, depending on where you are and what you're looking for. Ask questions,
Yeah.
test, 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 right? We say test often, fail fast, learn always.
Yes.
Because the yogis in the classics of Ayurveda will say, even if your attempt was unsuccessful, in producing the result you were looking for, it was successful in ruling out a path
Yes.
that you no longer need to pursue because now you know it don't work,
Yes.
right?
That goes
Eh,
perfectly with that Albert Einstein quote. I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. And that's
yeah,
okay. Like other
yeah,
times people look at failure and they are really critical on themselves. They think, oh man, I really messed this up. It's like, no, you actually are learning through this process. You just got to reframe how you're viewing this mistake that you made.
yeah, and that's a lot of the neuroplastic training and
Yes.
habit evolution, and we go into that in Alchemy Club as well. We use a lot of the work from Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan from The Gap
Mhm.
and the Gain. We also use a lot of David Gray's liberating structures in our group calls and dynamics so that we're able to hold that container and get that momentum going, asking
Yeah.
questions. And for those of you listening, if you don't know where to start, if you're thinking about how do I begin my mind body journey, go ahead and book a strategy session with me. The link is on the screen here. You can also go to my website at www.rasa-yana.com and just shoot me a note there right from my homepage. There's a form that you can email me directly and just say, hey, I would love to talk about my goals and find out what strategy is next best, what action steps you need to take next, and what's getting in your way, because we all have our own blind spots
We do.
and octopuses that we don't see. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
What are you looking at? Right. And so, and to be able to kind of steer you in the right direction, or, steer you to more sports performance, if that's what you're looking for, reaching out to Priya at Elite.Edge.consulting. Her website's in the chat. I'll be sure to include that when I send out the replay of this. And thank you for coming, Priya. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. And um,
This is
yeah, just
great.
being
I
here.
had a ton of fun. I would do this all the time with you. And I appreciate you having me here and allowing me to speak and opening me up into your community. The work that you're doing is so great. Just bringing people together, helping people be healthier. It's great work that we're doing. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here and just speak with you today.
Namaste. Be well.
Namaste.